Hey there, it's Alex from Lab Gear Reviews. If you've ever stood in a lab wondering whether the next analytical balance you're eyeing is really worth the price tag, you're in the right place. I'm not here to hype up features I haven't tested. I'm here to walk through what it actually feels like to have this piece of equipment on a daily bench, the hidden trade-offs that usually only come up after a few weeks of use, and to help you decide if it fits your workflow or if you should keep shopping. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First, let's talk about the decision point that most of us hit before we buy a balance. You need precision, you need reliability, and you need something that won't throw a tantrum when you're in the middle of a critical assay. The Sartorius Entris 2 120-gram analytical balance promises 0.0001 G readability, which on paper looks impressive for a benchtop model. The big question, though, is whether that level of resolution actually translates into practical benefit for the typical chemistry or biology routine. I've spent the last month setting up the Entris 2 in a shared lab space that handles everything from small molecule synthesis to routine enzyme kinetics. The first thing you notice is the footprint. At roughly 1,016 inches, the unit is compact enough to slip onto a standard lab bench without eating up valuable surface area, but it still commands a presence. The enclosure is a sturdy, stainless steel chassis with a glass front that you can lift with a single push of a button. That little lift-up action feels smooth, and the door seals tightly when closed, which is great because it keeps drafts out, a subtle but essential factor when you're trying to achieve that 0.0001 G repeatability. Now, for the practical side of daily use. Loading a sample onto the pan is straightforward. The pan has a matte finish that reduces static cling, which I've found to be a common annoyance with lighter balances. When you place a vial or a small beaker, the balance does a quick auto-tare and settles within a second. The readout appears on a clear LCD that is backlit, so you can see it even under the fluorescent lights that dominate most labs. I was initially worried that the small display would be hard to read from a distance, but the contrast is sufficient that I can glance at the result while standing a few feet away without squinting. One practical strength that becomes apparent after a few runs is the software integration. The Entris 2 comes with Sartorius LabX software, which lets you log measurements directly to a PC. I connected the balance via USB and set up a simple spreadsheet template for my daily calibrations. The software automatically records timestamps, sample IDs, and measurement values, which eliminates the manual transcription step that often introduces errors. For labs that need traceability, think regulated environments or quality-controlled production, the ability to export data in CSV format is a genuine time saver. On the downside, the balance does have a couple of hidden hitches that aren't obvious from the spec sheet. First, the weighing range tops out at 120 G. That limit is fine if your work revolves around small sample sizes, everything from milligram powders to subgram reaction mixtures. However, I quickly ran into a scenario where I needed to weigh a medium-sized buffer solution that sat at about 150 G. The balance simply refused to accept it, forcing me to split the sample and remeasure, which added extra steps and potential for cumulative error. If your protocols routinely push beyond the 120 G ceiling, you'll need to consider a higher capacity model. Another practical weakness is the balance's warm-up time. In a busy lab, you often need a balance ready to go the moment you're set to start a new experiment. The Entris 2 requires about 10 minutes of warm-up to reach its stated stability. During that period, the display will flash a waiting icon, and any measurements taken will be flagged as out of tolerance. It's not a deal-breaker, but you have to plan ahead. In contrast, some competitors reach stable performance in under 5 minutes, which can shave precious minutes off a workflow that involves multiple weighings per day. Temperature and humidity fluctuations are another real-world factor. The balance does have an internal environmental sensor that compensates for modest changes, but I noticed a slight drift when the lab's HVAC kicked in mid-morning. The drift was on the order of 0.0002 G, which is negligible for most applications but could be problematic if you're performing ultratrace analyses where every microgram counts. The workaround was to let the HVAC cycle settle before starting the most sensitive measurements, or to use the built-in environmental correction mode, which adds an extra click to the workflow. Who should buy the Sartorius Entris 2? If you're a researcher or technician who works primarily with small samples, think analytical chemistry, pharmaceutical formulation, or molecular biology, this balance offers a solid combination of precision, data management, and a compact footprint that won't dominate your bench. The built-in software integration is especially valuable if you need to keep in